Aileen Woodley, and I play Felicity in Felicity, an American Girl Adventure.
Hi, I'm Katie Henney, and I play Felicity's best friend, Elizabeth Cole.
Oh, look, the churchyard. Virginia, because this is where our characters lived more than 200 years ago, in the year 1775, when America was just beginning to become a nation. Williamsburg is important to Felicity's story, and it's an even more important place in the real history of our country. And what's especially cool, this place, Colonial Williamsburg, is a special kind of living museum, where the buildings, the people, and everything looks and works just like it would have in colonial times. So now we're going to show you around, and you can see what Felicity's world would have really been like. Williamsburg was settled in 1632 and was originally called Middle Plantation because it was settled by several planters. In 1699, it had grown into a town and was chosen as the capital of the colony of Virginia. Its name was changed to Williamsburg in honor of King William III of England, because most of the people here had come from England and they lived under the rule of the king. But as time went on and the colonists became more established here, some of them started to think it wasn't fair to be ruled by a man thousands of miles away across the ocean.
So the colonies were divided into two kinds of people: the loyalists who wanted to remain loyal subjects of the king, and the patriots who supported independence from the king. This caused many disagreements between friends, neighbors, and even family members, and led to talk of a revolution or uprising against the king, just like between Elizabeth's family and Felicity's, or between Felicity's father and her grandfather. Speaking of Mr. Merriman, let's start our tour at one of Williamsburg's finest stores.
The Prentice store is one of the oldest stores in America, and it looks a lot like Felicity's father's store would have. William Prentice started as an indentured servant to a man named Archibald Blair.
Sort of like Ben was apprenticed to Mr. Merriman?
Yes. When Mr. Blair died, one of his daughters sold her share in the store to William Prentice. He took over as manager for the store, and within a few years, owned most of the store. Just like at Mr. Merriman's store, the townspeople could find the finest things from all over the world. Things like linens and china. Beeswax candles. Do you think they smell good? That's not pleasant.
No. This is the Thomas Everard house. This is what Felicity's house might have looked like.
It was built in 1718 by John Brush. In the 1750s, it was bought by Thomas Everard. Everard was an orphan born in London and sent to America. Everard eventually served in many public offices and even served as mayor of Williamsburg. He lived in this house with his two daughters, Fanny and Patsy. Imagine what it would have been like to grow up in a house like this. There was no electricity, much less video games. So games like 9-pin and activities like rolling hoops and walking on stilts were good ways to pass time. Here we are at the Mary Stith house. Miss Manderly, Felicity's teacher, might have lived in a house like this one. School for Felicity and Elizabeth was very different from school today. Girls didn't learn math and science. Instead, Felicity was taught how to be a gentlewoman. To become a proper lady meant learning proper manners, how to serve tea, and dancing.
Hey, Shay, remember the dances we had to do for the movie? Should we see if we still know them?
Sure. Okay. Public jail, where Mr. Cole and Jiggy Nye would have been held. It was built in 1704. At first, there were only 2 cells, but many more were added later. Early on, it was used to hold runaway slaves and debtors, who were men who owed money, like Jiggy and I did in the stories.
During the Revolutionary War, it housed loyalists considered by patriots to be criminals. That's why Mr. Cole was locked up until Felicity's father helped him get out. This building actually served as a jail until as recently as 1910.
The Governor's Palace is the grandest building in all of Williamsburg. It took 16 years to build and was finally completed in 1722. Before the Revolutionary War, the governor was considered the man next in charge to the king. The palace was home to many fine balls, just like the one Felicity and Elizabeth attended. Near the start of the Revolutionary War, the real governor, Governor Dunmore, locked himself in the palace and demanded that 40 men guard the palace against patriots.
On June 8, 1775, the governor sent his wife and children back to England. Then he fled Williamsburg, never to return. For the rest of the war, the palace served as a hospital for wounded soldiers. After the United States declared its independence in 1776, both Patrick Henry and Thomas Jefferson served as governor and lived in the house. In 1779, the capital of Virginia moved to Richmond, and the palace was used again as a hospital. 156 soldiers and 2 women are buried in the gardens.
A fire broke out in 1781 and burned the original building down. But luckily, archaeological digs uncovered artifacts, and that, along with drawings that Thomas Jefferson had done, helped the builders reconstruct the palace to look just as it looked before. It was finished in 1934. The palace now houses some of the early governor's original belongings. Here we are at the governor's royal garden maze. Let's get lost. Okay. Kate! Where'd you go? This way! Here we are at the horse stables. This is similar to where Penny would have been kept at Grandfather's plantation. In colonial times, horses were not just friends or companions. Since there were no cars, trucks, or even trains, they were their main source of transportation. Can you imagine going to school on a horse? Or seeing your mom and dad take off on a horse to work? This is Carter's Grove Plantation. Felicity's grandfather lived in a plantation just like this one. Carter Burwell built this house on 1,400 acres he inherited from his grandfather. He started building the house in 1737, a year before he married his wife, Lucy. Carter and Lucy had 9 children. The house was finished in November 1755, but Carter Burwell lived to enjoy the house only for a very short time. He died 6 months after the house was completed. 8 more owners lived in the house until 1969, when the plantation and 790 acres of the original land became part of Williamsburg.
There you have it. We hope you enjoyed seeing the places that Felicity and Elizabeth might have had their adventures.
Thanks.
How do we get out of here?
Now what?